Alright, hello everyone and welcome to NFL Discussion. I'm your host and NFL enthusiast Dougie Doug. In today's episode I'm going to be discussing Saturday, week 15 of the 2023 NFL season. We have reached that time of the NFL season where games are now being played on Saturday. So we had this 3-game slate to start things off with the Vikings taking on the Bengals, the Steelers taking on the Colts, and the Broncos taking on the Lions. And with that, we'll go ahead and get right into the action, starting with the Minnesota Vikings, who will need to rely on their defense to cover up for their erratic quarterback play. And perhaps, maybe, they have solved their quarterback dilemma despite being defeated. So the Vikings' overtime loss to the Bengals will sting because of Nick Mullen's wildly inconsistent performance. If not for Trey Hendrickson's offside penalty that negated a pick six midway through the fourth quarter, the Vikings might have looked to immediately replace Mullins. Throughout the game, he made some head-scratching throws, which at times cost his team, but he ultimately posted respectable passing numbers, throwing for 303 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Assuming the Vikings continue to move forward with Mullins, which they probably will, their defense will need to play lights out in order to compensate for potential offensive turnovers and inefficiencies. Minnesota's allowed 3 touchdowns, all 3 on Saturday, in its last 3 games. If the defense holds up as it did in weeks 12 and 14, they can deal with the good and bad with Mullins under center. So yeah, not a great performance. Certainly some of those throws were not pretty good, but I think just like for Jake Browning, it was a tale of 2 halves. The Vikings got off to a lead in the first half, but Mullins didn't really play that well. He got better in the second half, not like markedly better, but it was an improvement on the first half. And ultimately, the Vikings are kind of stuck with who they have at quarterback at this point in the season. I don't really know if there's really no point in trying to find somebody else to sign to bring in. I don't think. Jared Hall is a rookie and he's an unknown, so in a way I can kind of understand not wanting to switch to him, especially when you're still holding on to a postseason spot. Can't go back to Josh Jobs, so for the moment the Vikings are stuck with Nick Mullins until he kind of forces them to make a switch to Jared Hall. Cincinnati Bengals. So more key injuries in this game could test the resiliency of this team. Jamar Chase went down with an injury. DJ Reader went down with an injury. And as for Jake Browning, tale of 2 halves. Bengals were down 2 scores at half, but Jake Browning rallied this team and basically with a good throw to Tyler Boyd in the overtime, he was able to take his team into field goal range for the Bengals to win the game. Early in the game, DJ Reader went down with a leg injury. In the fourth quarter, Jamar Chase exited with a shoulder injury. Neither of those guys returned to action, and both injuries could make the pathway to a playoff spot more difficult than it has been without Joe Burrow. To Browning's credit, he's exceeded expectations, throwing for 6 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in 4 starts, but Chase's potential absence would be a huge blow to the passing attack. Sure, T. Higgins had a spectacular touchdown reception to tie the game at the end of regulation, and Joe Mixon has scored 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games, but Chase, who leads the team in relevant receiving categories, often opens up the field for his fellow pass catchers. Zach Taylor told reporters after the game that Reader is likely out for the season. If Reader isn't able to suit up, the Bengals' 25th ranked run defense could struggle mightily as teams line up to beat them on the ground. We're going to see if Cincinnati has what it takes or has enough depth and secondary playmakers to continue its push for the postseason. The Bengals are 3-1 with 3 consecutive victories with Browning as their starting quarterback. So yeah, I mean the defense kind of stepped up here towards the end, taking advantage of some bad quarterback play. Jake Browning, rough first half, but he turned things around in the second half. That Jamar Chase injury, again, huge blow for them, but they still have T. Higgins. So, yeah, at the very least, production, I know maybe shouldn't drop up too dramatically, I wouldn't think. Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, they have seemingly lost their identity, and not seemingly. They have lost their identity, so, and pretty much they are an organization in free fall, and I think really only one way to stop that free fall is to not only reclaim your identity, but also learn to play a complete football game. For much of 2023, the Steelers have found ways to win with a rudderless offense by playing hard, limiting mistakes, and coming up big in the brightest moments. However, those traits have been absent over the last 3 weeks. Pittsburgh was physically dominated by the Cardinals and came out sluggish against the Patriots. On Saturday, the Steelers started fast, going up 13-0 after a touchdown, blocked punt, and another touchdown, but they faded after that. An ejection for one of their safeties, Kazee, didn't help either. Neither did Minka Fitzpatrick going out of an injury. However, the Steelers were undone by bad defense, poor effort, miscues, turnovers, and some questionable coaching decisions. This doesn't look like the Steelers team of old, or even the one from earlier this year. Ben Roethlisberger said on his podcast that maybe the tradition of the Pittsburgh Steelers is done, and you know what, he might be onto something. And even though he's been in the Steelers building for quite some time, he was in the Steelers organization for a long time, and the Steelers have to change their course if they want to reach the playoffs. They have to reclaim their physical identity and play with the sort of intensity and efficiency they showed early on Saturday and in the second half against New England. Otherwise, their season will be over. Truth be told, it probably is over, and there will be more questions raised about a coaching staff that already parted ways with their offensive coordinator earlier in the season. Indianapolis Colts continue to ride the next man up mentality, and because of that, they were able to overcome their deficit, 13-0 deficit, put up 30 unanswered points, despite losing Michael Pittman and Zach Moss. So their rookie quarterback Anthony Richardson led it on injured reserve to 4 games, which has led to the Colts spending most of the season relying on backup quarterback Gardner Minshew. They're also in their second stretch of Jonathan Taylor. On Saturday, Michael Pittman was ruled off with concussion following a hard hit. Zach Moss, who's done a solid job filling in for Taylor, exited with an arm injury. X-rays did come back negative on that. Once again, Indianapolis found players to fill the void. DJ Montgomery dropped a touchdown pass, but made a couple of key catches, including a redemption score on issue and drive. Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson combined for 157 rushing yards and helped wear down the Steelers' defense. It's a credit to rookie head coach Shane Steichen and his ability to adjust offensively, and it could also put Steichen firmly in the conversation for Coach of the Year if he isn't already in it. I don't know why he wouldn't be. Heading into Sunday, the Colts are now half a game behind the Jaguars in the South, though Jacksonville has won both head-to-head matchups. If Indianapolis can continue to fight through the injuries and win a division year after going 4-12-1, it'd be hard to ignore Steichen during voting season for Coach of the Year. But again, I don't know. I mean, he's a serious candidate for Coach of the Year because the job he's done with the Colts is remarkable. It's not a favorable situation, especially for a rookie head coach, but it really is a testament to him and his staff that they're able to overcome all this. Denver Broncos. So this is still a team that is a work in progress, especially defensively, and given the misfires that they had in this game, they just weren't able to keep pace. There's going to be a lot written and said about Denver's collapse against Detroit, about squandering an opportunity to truly get in the thick of the AFC playoff race. But here's a keyword potential dose of realism. The Broncos aren't a playoff team. At least not this season, or at least if they did make the postseason, well, they'd probably get drilled in the first round. Yeah, they'd probably get knocked out in the first round. Denver's league worst run defense was exposed again very badly by the Lions. Meanwhile, Denver managed just 3 yards to carry, and a one-dimensional offense resulted in Russell Wilson spending a good portion of the evening running for his life or looking out his ear hole. But do remember that this was a team that looked completely lost last season under the coaching of Nathaniel Hackett, and also to start this season, this was a team that lost 5 of its first 6 games. That the Broncos are still in playoff contention at Week 15 speaks to an improvement Sean Payton has engineered in his first season. The run defense needs to be a focus in the offseason, specifically upgrades at linebacker. The offensive line needs work, although that can be said about 25 other teams. The Broncos most likely aren't going to go from the Broncos weren't going to go from last year's mess to Super Bowl contenders in a year, but Saturday's result aside, there has been progress made in Denver, and that is something to build on in 2024. Detroit Lions. So this team will go as far in the playoffs as the defense takes them, and Detroit had been on a slump before this game, but they woke up and did some in this one. And yes, the offense plays great, but the defense is kind of what but the defense had been struggling as of late. The defense kind of rounding back into form and playing some good football, and they need to play like they did against the Broncos in order for the Lions to make any sort of noise in the postseason. So to many, the story of Saturday night for the Lions will be the blowout. There's no shortage of highlights in that regard. Whether it was Jared Goff's 5 passing scores of 185 yards, the Lions ravaged Denver 4 on the ground. However, none of that is news. Jamar Gibbs and David Montgomery are as good a 1-2 punch in the backfield as any in the NFL. Amon St. Brown may have been a day 2 pick, but he's a first-year talent wide receiver. Sam Laporta has been a revelation at tight end as a rookie. Detroit's offensive line is as good as any in the NFL, and Goff is one of the more underrated quarterbacks, especially when he avoids turnovers. But if the Lions are going to legitimately challenge the likes of the Eagles and the 49ers in the playoffs, then Detroit's defense needs to play like it did against the Broncos. The Lions harassed Russell Wilson mercilessly with an aggressive game plan that included constant blitzes. Detroit allowed less than 100 total yards in the first half and just 287 in the game. That included quite a bit of garbage time. Detroit probably isn't in the same tier as the Eagles or the Niners, but when the defense performs at this level, they might be able to beat anyone. So yeah, how far Detroit goes, how much noise they make in the postseason, all depends on their defense. But it is impressive that this team has now secured 10 wins and is a potential Seahawks loss on Monday night from securing a playoff spot, being the second team right behind the 49ers to do that. Ain't that something? And with that, will conclude this episode of NFL Discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe and like button down below.